Welcome to today's Global Connections program. I'm Bill Miller. What is the United Nations Sustainable Development Fund? What is the Sustainable Development Goals Fund doing to help empower women, to combat climate change, and to eliminate illiteracy? We'll be back in just a moment to talk about these and other important issues. Welcome back to our program. Today we're taking a look at a very unique fund, the Sustainable Development Goals Fund, that's working to help achieve the Sustainable Development Goals such as combating illiteracy, combating climate change, empowering women, and many others. My guest today is an expert on the goals and on the fund. My guest today is Ms. Paloma Duran. Paloma Duran, a Spanish national, brings 25 years experience in development and UN issues. Currently, she is the director of the Sustainable Development Goals Fund. Ms. Paloma Duran, welcome to today's Global Connections program.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to come here.
I appreciate you being with me today. We're going to talk about the Sustainable Development Goals and the fund, but we probably ought to flash back to 2000 and look at the forerunner, the precursor, if you will, of the Sustainable Development Goals, and those were the Millennium Development Goals. There were 8 logical, practical, quantifiable goals. What were a couple of those goals, and why was it important to galvanize the world and get groups, literally tens of thousands of groups, focusing on these goals?
Well, I think that the idea of the Millennium Development Goals was just trying to put specific goals and indicator in order to eradicate poverty from all over the world. What happened is in the UN during the 90s, we have a lot of conferences just trying to get agreements among member states to work in many different areas. And in 2000, the idea was, well, let's try to put everything together with a specific targets, a specific timing, and a specific goals in order really to eradicate poverty from all over the world. So in 2000, we have a situation in the international arena which is a completely different one than the situation that we have now. So at that time, the idea was to work mainly focus on developing countries and trying to prepare the traditional list of themes and areas where the UN was working for development. So it was education, it was health, it was hunger, it was decent jobs, it was, let's say the traditional list. Which, now the situation is a little bit different, and that's why the idea is to see what happened during these 15 years, since 2000 up to now, and then try to see how can we move forward and just to think about the future. So that's more or less the general picture about the MDGs.
Exactly, and that 15-year period, we saw that some of the developing countries achieved all 8 Millennium Development Goals, some achieved some of the Millennium Development Goals, but now with the, the expiration, if you will, of the Millennium Development Goals, December 31st, 2015, we're going to have the Sustainable Development Goals, and these are 17, again, logical, quantifiable goals. What are a couple of the Sustainable Development Goals that we're going to be looking at?
Well, I think that we have to explain first that the situation, the international situation, is different. I don't think that now development is only for developing countries. We have a lot of challenges now that we didn't have in the past. For instance, there are some countries that in 2000 they were in the list of developing countries, and today they are in the list of middle-income countries, because economically are countries that are improving the situation, but at the same time they have a lot of inequality in the countries, meaning that the situation in 2015 economically and politically is different. Plus, I think that now we have new themes that in 2000 we didn't have in the agenda. For instance, all the references to climate change, that it was not in the agenda in 2000. And also we have new actors, because in 2000 the agenda was just focused on the governments and the countries, but now we have civil society, we have private sector, we have of course governments, we have international organizations. So I think that now is really, I mean, let's say it's a very challenging situation, and at the same time we need the goals. I mean, with this different situation, what kind of goals do we need? I'm not saying that we have 17 now because we have much more problems than in 2000, but I think that the approach, we need a different approach that we have in the past.
Exactly.
So now we have climate change, for instance, that we didn't have in the past, but we have a very important thing now, which is the conviction that poverty is something that we have to work in a multi-dimensional approach, meaning that if, for instance, I'm thinking in a very specific program that maybe is easy to understand that, no? We have in the past, in the fund where I was working before, we have a program for trying to ensure the access to water for indigenous population. What happened was that in order to ensure the access to water, we need to have first that this community of indigenous people is well organized. When they work together, we try to help them to receive the ID that I never have in the past. With the ID, they were able to have the access to land. With the access to land, they have the possibility to ask for the access to water. And with the access to water, they were able to ensure the access to food. So what I'm trying to say is that, I mean, we cannot just fix poverty and the problems related to poverty working in one specific area. We need to work all together. And I think that this is one of the challenges that we are going to have with the new agenda.
Exactly, and as you mentioned, the Sustainable Development Goals apply to everyone, all the countries on the planet. And you mentioned also too about the different actors that are involved today. When the Millennium Development Goals came out in 2000, the majority of them were really just being dealt with by a few non-governmental organizations, the governments that had adopted them. But today you see the private sectors involved, you see literally tens of thousands of companies involved, you see faith-based groups, virtually, I would dare to say, throw out a figure, 95% of all faith-based groups, if not all of them, are involved in helping to achieve these Millennium Development Goals and improve their societies. And so it's a totally different ball game today. And of course, climate change wasn't even on the radar screen to a large number of people. So it's changed. Now, your Sustainable Development Goal Fund, what exactly, very briefly, what is that? You talked about one of the projects. What is how is it set up and what will it do?
Okay, so I have to explain this very, very, very fast.
Okay.
I think that first thing is that we could like first to ensure the national ownership of the programs, meaning that we don't want to impose to the countries what they have to do. We would like to know what are the needs of the country and the needs of the population, and we would like to work with the local actors. So a very pragmatic thing in order to do so is that with our programs, as a requirement, we ask for matching funds, meaning that if they are going to receive from our fund, for instance, 1 million, they have to find in the field, in the country with local actors, an additional 1 million coming from local actors. But the idea is not only to get the money from there, but the idea is that even the governance system that we have, I mean, as a requirement, they have to organize a national committee with the local government, with, of course, the UN, and with the local actors that are also putting the resources in order to make the decisions, the day-by-day decisions of the program. This is one of the things. The other thing is that we would like also to promote the work of all the agencies in the field together, meaning to promote this traditional program that we call in the UN Delivering as One.
Right. Now, when you say agencies, you're talking about UN agencies?
UN agencies.
Like, such as the United Nations Development Program, the UN Educational, Scientific and Cultural
That's it, the
Organization,
food.
UNICEF.
Mhm. Okay.
Please.
Because the idea is that, as I told you before, poverty is a multidimensional program. If we are going to work, for instance, in order to ensure access to food for kids, we need to have UNICEF working for kids. We need to have FAO, which is the agency working on food. We need also to work with UNDP, which is really the agency working for eradication of poverty. And then you need to work with UN Women, which is also the agency working with women. So the idea is that, we don't want to work like in a very independent areas. We would like to put all together. So as a requirement, our programs need to have at least 3 of the UN agencies working in the field. And the consequence of that is not only to promote this idea of delivering as one for the UN, but also with the government. The consequence is that even the ministers in the local government have to work together, because if you have food, children, poverty and health, for instance, you need to work with all the departments there, which means that we are also promoting the coordination even in the national government. And I think that this is a very important thing. And also the third thing is that we are trying to promote this engagement of the private sector and other actors, like you mentioned, the faith-based associations or organizations, also universities, civil society, local actors. We would like really to engage all the actors that are responsible for development, no? Because we don't think that this is only the responsibility of the government.
Exactly. Everybody has a role in this. And
That's
as you
it.
mentioned, by having these UN agencies coordinate and cooperate, you promote communication amongst them. You eliminate that silo effect where an
That's
agency
it.
may just be dealing with one group, another agency with another group. You also eliminate duplication of services, which is very important. It's very wasteful to have several services going to the same population. So it's just logically, it's very logical to do that, and so it's very important to do that.
It's logical but not easy.
I can imagine with any bureaucracy, you're going to pick a bureaucracy any place. That's probably true. Well, you have 3 key thematic areas. One is the inclusive growth for poverty eradication. Talk a little bit about that. What do you want to do in that area? What are a couple of projects that you have operating right now to reduce poverty?
Promote that. Well, the idea with the inclusive economic growth is that when I think that the easy way to understand that is very easy, but it's just to show some of our programs. No, for instance, we are working now in one specific program, which is to ensure food security and nutrition in one country in Africa. In order to do so, traditionally, when you hear something about access to food, you are thinking just to work only with the food that you are going to use. But at the same time, we would like to promote the creation of local businesses around the use of the food. For instance, in Africa, one of the main problems they have related to the access to food is that even if in the country they have food enough for everyone, sometimes they don't have the training or the possibility to learn how to use the food in the same way, or how to keep the food in the same way, or in the best way, or how to distribute the food in the best way. So the idea is to, with this project that I'm explaining to you, the idea is, of course, to work with the access to food in order to ensure that all the people are going to have that. But at the same time, why don't create local businesses, or to promote the creation of local businesses in order to create companies that are ready to keep the food, to maintain the food, to distribute the food, and to go to the remote areas or rural areas to distribute also the food there. But just trying that the producers in the country are the owners and the beneficiaries of the project. That's more or less the idea.
Well, you're watching Global Connections Television, which is an independently produced program. The opinions expressed on Global Connections are solely those of the moderator and his guest. We would invite our viewers to go to www.globalconnectionstelevision.com to view previous shows. Also, we would invite any ideas you might have for future guests and future topics to Today we're taking a look at the Sustainable Development Goals Fund and what the fund is doing to help achieve these goals, such as combating climate change or promoting literacy or involving themselves in a variety of different issues. So my guest today is an expert on the fund and on these Sustainable Development Goals. My guest today is Ms. Paloma Duran. Ms. Paloma Duran is the director of the Sustainable Development Goals Fund. I might also mention before we get into this that we would encourage our viewers to go to www.sdgfund.org and they can tap into a lot more information than we're going to be able to put out today, but that's a very important website. Or they can always just Google Sustainable Development Goals or Millennium Development Goals, whatever they would like. As you were talking about this, it sounds like they're looking for new innovative ways to be more effective, to provide services to people, to better use the resources, financial or whatever the resources, to really to be more effective in getting the services to people and to focus on reducing poverty or helping to provide food security or whatever the case might be. Are we learning from previous programs and building upon what we maybe should have not done the last time? We're doing better this time?
No, but you know, in the fund we have a very good experience from the MDG Fund. The MDG Fund was a fund created in 2007. It was just a specific fund only created by Spain and financed only by Spain, which is a little bit different than now. Now, I didn't say that before, but in the new fund, in the SDG Fund, we have 22 countries contributing with resources in order to implement the programs. But we have the experience from the previous fund. In the MDG Fund, we were working in 50 countries, 130 joint programs with 26 agencies of the UN, and the evaluation that it was presented some months ago says that we improve the life of 9 million people, which is really, I mean, an important number of people, because at the end, I think that the most important thing for the new agenda and from the previous agenda is to put the human being in the center of all the programs for development, because at the end, the most important thing really is to take care of every human being. That's the goal. Let's see if we can improve the way to do that, but I mean, the human being is really in the center. So the idea is to use some of the mistakes that we already did with the previous fund, and at the same time trying to improve. No, I think that many of the substantive changes that now we have in the new fund are because we have the experience from previous fund and previous experiences. For instance, this idea that I tried to explain about the national ownership, the engagement of the local actors, the work with all the agencies together, the requirement of the matching funds from the country, those are things that are completely new and really is a new methodology to work in the field. So I'm sure that in some years we will see some changes.
Exactly. Now, one thing I believe you had, the Sustainable Development Goals, I'm not sure if the fund or the whatever, set up a private sector advisory group. And is this to involve businesses more into it and to show how they can participate and actually perhaps increase their operations in various countries too?
Yes, I mean the idea with it was created by the SDG Fund, and the idea of the advisory group is to have companies from the 5 regions of the UN, meaning Asia, Africa, Latin American and Caribbean, East Europe and West countries. So the idea is to have companies from the 5 regions, and traditionally companies are usually seen as new actors or new donors, no, for development. In many cases we are thinking about companies just only because they are going to give us more resources, which is fine, and I will be more than happy to receive a lot of money from the companies to work on development. But at the same time, and in order to be sure that we have also the companies as actors, because some of them are working in the field and they are doing a social work, even if they don't recognize the work that they are doing as a social work. So the idea is, why don't create this advisory group in order to hear the companies, see what the companies can do with us, and engage the companies to work with us in the field. Of course, as I told you, if they would like to be donors, it will be wonderful. But at the same time, let's try to have them as really actors with us. So the idea of this advisory group was first to have a real toolkit where we can know what the companies would like and can do with us. So the first thing that we are going to do in November is just to present or to launch this toolkit that we are preparing with the companies with the help of the Kennedy School, Harvard University, the program on social responsibilities, and also a network which is called Business Fights Poverty. And the idea is to have this report that we are going to present here in the UN in November with companies and member states. And then after that, we would like to have, in the same way that we have a human development report, to have a report that really have all put together all the best practices, experiences, lessons learned that we have working with the private sector, but just to change a little bit this mentality that the private sector is only there because they are going to give us money, no? The idea is let's engage them with us in the field. I mean, taking into account that the UN, you know, that is very serious in order to have companies that already pass this due diligence process that we have to be sure that the companies are transparent, they are doing a good job, and they are at least trying to achieve the minimum ethical principles. So I think that it will be really a wonderful project.
It certainly sounds like it. And you led right into my next question, that we always, with any fund or with any program, programs need to be accountable. They need to be transparent. We need to see where the money is spent to make sure it's being spent efficiently. And is there a platform available where people can view this, or can they go to the SDGfund.org website and see this, see your programs and that type of thing?
Yes.
And also look at, no, that's fine, just look at the efficiency of the program?
Yes, I mean, if anybody would like to go to our webpage, we have there the explanation about agencies that are UN agencies that are working in every program, distribution of resources, even they have the access to the content of the program, so they can see immediately in a real time who are the actors participating in every of the programs and so on. Plus, within UNDP, we have a platform which is called MPTF Gateway, which is the entity in UNDP, is our administrative agent, really the entity in charge of the follow-up and monitor what happened with the resources. So in real time, you can check where are the money of the fund. If the money is already with the agencies that are implementing the programs, if the money is still with the secretariat trying to distribute the program, they have all the financial information in this platform, which you can check the whole information on real time. Plus, you have also the link to the annual report that we have every year, in order really to show that we would like to be accountable and we would like really to be transparent in order to be efficient. No?
Exactly.
So
well, in the last 30 seconds we have, what do you see as the easiest question, perhaps the hardest, what do you see as the major challenge to the Sustainable Development Goals Fund as you move forward?
Is the most difficult question, I tell you. No, just to summarize that, I think that the most important thing, and for me really my dream, is to take care of every person in need in every program that we are implementing in developing countries.
That is certainly a challenge. It certainly is, and it sounds like you're really doing some wonderful work. And I think that this is something that we can all participate in, and we should all participate in. And it's a situation where you can lead the way, and we move forward, and hopefully build better societies and secure a better world, because that's what really all the UN agencies are about. That's what faith-based groups, many are talking about doing. They talk about governmental institutions. They have to work together on these programs and these problems, because it will take a collective effort to eliminate, or not eliminate, but reduce or sort of roll back climate change, or to eliminate poverty, or to promote sustainable development, or to have clean drinking water, or to eliminate AIDS and the Ebola virus and different things like that. And this is extremely important, and it's I think it's very gratifying what the United Nations countries have done with the Millennium Development Goals, and also with the upcoming Sustainable Development Goals. And we really do need to learn more about them, because I can speak only for the United States, but the vast majority of Americans have participated in achieving the Millennium Development Goals, but they didn't know that they were participating in achieving the Millennium Development Goals. Now, their parent organizations did, their churches or their service clubs or whatever, they were aware of it, but we still need to learn so much more about it. And they can go to sdgfund.org, or by the same token, they go to un.org, or just Google Sustainable Development Goals or Millennium Development Goals. But this is a very important program. But Paloma Duran, I want to thank you so very much for a very interesting and a very informative program.
Thank you to you, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to explain the program that we are doing.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank
you. Hope to hear more about it in the future.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Bill Miller. Thank you for joining us today on Global Connections Television.